Hi there, and welcome to another edition of the Gersnet Weekly Podcast, the independent Rangers podcast, which is brought to you by fans for fans, and where the content is absolutely free. It is episode 147 of the flagship show of the Gersnet Weekly Podcast. I'm your host tonight, and I'm very happy. You might hear my voice is a bit hoarse at the game today. Great result, so we'll discuss all that. I'm Colin Armstrong, I'm your host, and I've got a hoarse voice. As I say every week, guys, it's not just the pod that we have here at Gersnet. You know, we've got articles, match previews, match reports, all that kind of stuff. There's a history archive on the website. There's the forums, all that kind of stuff. So get yourself onto the website if you can. If you enjoy the pod, please put the word out there in social media. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, all that kind of a stuff. We're live tonight. It's a Sunday night after Rangers beat Celtic 1-0 at Ibrox today, hence the voice. But the show will be available to download and stream, as always, on a variety of platforms tomorrow, including Acast, iTunes, YouTube, Castbox, Stitcher, Spotify, all that kind of stuff. So now on to my guests. I'll bring in Chris Jack first. How are you, Chris? How are you doing?
Not too bad, Colin. Thanks for having us on once again. Delighted to be here, and thankfully all went okay this afternoon, so three happy smiling faces here.
Yeah, and I think Frankie's quite happy as well. He's doing his stuff in the background there. So I'm assuming, I mean, we were talking before we came on air about some of the press stuff that's happening at the moment, you know, because the club are charging a fee and all that kind of stuff. But I'm assuming you're still getting access to the actual games, and you were there today. Still
getting access to the games, thankfully. I've only missed the Livy game so far this season. That's the only one I didn't get access to. So thankfully there today. I really enjoyed it. Nice to have fans back on the Old Firm game as well. Was that all 5 of them last year? No, four of them last year. And the occasions just were really, really strange. Didn't feel, obviously it had the significance of an Old Firm game, but didn't have any of the passion and the sense of occasion of an Old Firm game. So just to have the fans back, I think that's the best Ibrox has been this season so far. And obviously a result that's fitting of that particular stage.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because my boy was going on about the atmosphere when we were coming home. He was like, I think he feels that's the best he's experienced in his time at going to Ibrox. You've also got a wee thing going on the side now. You've got your book out going for 55. Could you give us a wee sort of insight what's in that? Although I think the title maybe gives us a wee clue.
Yeah, title perhaps gives it away. It's basically a rundown of the last 10 years of the highs and lows, the good points, the bad points, the trials, the tribulations of life at Rangers. So first couple of chapters look at basically the build-up from regime change through to Steven Gerrard's appointment, then looking at Gerrard's first couple of seasons and really how he built the squad that would go on, and then won 55 last year. Chapters after that, basically a chapter per month going through the season, but looking at various key factors of it. So one's focused on the European aspect of it, one's focused on the Ibrox disaster. If a January chapter, one's looking at the April chapters, looking at absent friends, so people that saw Rangers play those games in 3rd division, 2nd division, but unfortunately weren't around to see Rangers get back to their rightful place at the top of Scottish football. So really, I tried to go a bit more in depth rather than just doing a book of 38 match reports. I've already done that for the paper last year, so it was something a wee bit different. And the feedback I've had so far has been great. Really pleased that the Rangers fans are enjoying what I've done with it, and hopefully in 12 months' time we're talking about a sequel.
Absolutely, and of course, if any Rangers supporters out there are looking to give, Christmas isn't too far on the horizon. It's only maybe 3 or 4 months away, so there's a wee present, and we always get a wee influx of Celtic supporters in these things. So they've maybe got in-laws that are Rangers supporters that they might want to buy it. So yeah, get onto Chris's book if you can. Also joining us tonight is Dougie Kinnear there down in the corner. How are you, Dougie?
I am feeling very champion, Colin, but equally as hoarse. I don't have a book coming out, but I was one of the regular fans doing the bouncy in the Copeland front during the game today.
Yeah, I mean it was full on today, I must admit. I mean we'll go on and talk a wee bit more about the game in depth, but it was quite nerve-wracking at times. But I mean, after we got the goal, especially the noise and all that kind of stuff, it was quite funny actually. There was a wee incident when I was today. A couple of supporters fell out. One was shouting something, the other one says, "Oh, you're being a bit negative," and all that kind of stuff. And all kicked off. I mean, it never came to blows or anything, but there was certainly an exchange of words. And then like 5 minutes later, Hollander scored, and then like everybody was pals again. That was it. It's just like there was they were all cuddling each other and all that. So it was quite funny. It just shows you the power of a goal in an Old Firm game can do. Right, Chris, I'll come to you first on today's game. I mean, I had a bit of a journey today because of the ScotRail strike. So there's no trains every Sunday at the moment. So I had to get up really early. Drive through, because obviously you're thinking, well, everyone who gets the train is going to have to probably get a bus or a car through, so the roads are going to be chocker. So I went through early, found a place to park, and then I started getting the messages saying, there's no sign of Patterson and all that. And I thought, oh Christ! And then the team came out, and there was just a wee bit of nervousness. But I think once that team came out, and we saw that Balogun was at right back and McCrory was in goals. So a really, really big win for Rangers today when you take that into consideration. The players that have been impacted with COVID over the last week. Steven Gerrard wasn't there today. Obviously, the team's taken by Gary McAllister. So I think Celtic might have fancied themselves a wee bit today. Obviously, they were favourites. I think it was like Thursday, Friday they became favourites for the game. So a big win and a big statement from Rangers today.
I think that's the type of win that sums up why Rangers are champions. Champions find ways to win games when your back's against the wall, when people have got you written off, when you're not expected to go and win. Good teams find ways to go and win games, and that's what Rangers did today. For all the problems they've had over the last week that you just mentioned there, as soon as that team came out, not many people would have fancied Rangers to go and get the job done today. But in the end, thoroughly deserved it. I thought first half wasn't much between us. Celtic also had a great chance. Edward, Ryan Kent hit the post. The second half, Rangers just stepped it up a level. Were really, really good, really controlled. And Celtic, for all the talk of Ange Ball, whatever that's supposed to be, and for all the talk of how good they are going forward, didn't really cause Rangers that many problems. For a team whose defensive record and defensive performances haven't been anywhere near the level that they were last year in the first couple of weeks of the season, for having a team that had Balogun at right back, inexperienced keeper, Celtic just didn't cause Rangers anywhere near enough problems to feel hard done by today. They might feel hard done by because they only lost 1-0 at Ibrox. Celtic didn't do enough to win the game. Rangers in the end did. I thought they thoroughly merited it.
Dougie, I suppose we have to talk about Big Leon. You know what I mean? Because he was the man. When we all found out, he's essentially third choice. Tav's out with this business with the COVID. It would appear that Patterson, I think the suggestion is there's a close contact issue there. And Big Leon, he's played the right back before, and I think it was in Europe, one of the European games last year. He sort of stepped in the first game. He's done okay. And then a couple other games after, he started to see, actually, he's a centre half. He's not a right back, and he'll do his best out there, but it's not an ideal situation. And given the new boy at Celtic, what's his name, Kyogo, I think there was a feeling, he scored 6 goals in 6 games or something for Celtic. So there was this sort of feeling that Rangers are a wee bit fragile at the back. They had Big Balogun at right back. They've got McCrory in goal. But I did notice just before the teams kicked off, Kyogo made his way out to the left flank, and you knew then that Celtic were targeting Big Balogun. And you have to say, I think he had a wee moment in the first half where he made a wee mistake. But other than that, he got man in the match, and he thoroughly deserved it. It was an absolute outstanding performance by him today.
Yeah, like yourself, I was nervous when the rumours emerged this morning that Nathan Patterson wasn't going to be in the squad. When you consider that Kyogo's been on form for Celtic and he's pacey, and the last time that Balogun played at right back for us was in the Antwerp game that you mentioned. We played the first 45 minutes, whipped off at half time. Patterson came on and scored within the minute after everything that had been going with Patterson regarding COVID. I was nervous. I genuinely thought that they were going to target Balogun, which, as you say, Kyogo did kind of sit directly on him. I think Balogun played to his strengths rather than to Kyogo's. He didn't try and match him for pace. He recognised that he didn't have the pace to run side by side with Kyogo. He sat deeper. And I think that he was very aggressive in the challenge. Every time Kyogo was on the ball, Balogun timed his tackles very well. And I thought he was very composed in possession. for me, he was a very worthy man of the match. I thought he had a very, very good game, and certainly shut up a lot of Rangers fans that pre-match were quite vocal on Twitter. And you actually seen the Rangers admin replying to one fan who expressed their nerves pre-match. But I don't think he was the only player worthy of highlighting. You just spoke about Robbie McCrory there. You're talking about a youngster who's been thrown in at the deep end. He's played against Alashkert over in Armenia. He's played at Ibrox now in front of a packed and very noisy Ibrox against our biggest rivals, and I think he's came through both games very well. It's easy to see why the coaching staff think very highly of him. I think when you look at his performance today, he looked very much like a Rangers number one in the waiting. And the other player that I would call out, Stephen Davis. You've gone from one extreme to the other. You're talking about a youngster that's come through the Rangers Academy to a 36-year-old who's actually older than me. He's one of the few players in the Rangers team that's older than me. And in 80 minutes on the clock, Celtic started to come back into the game. We'd got a goal. We started to kind of sit back off them, allowing them to come into the game. And it was Stephen Davis that really drove us on at the end. You seen it in one of the breaks of play where he won possession back, and he was the one that drove forward and played the ball outside to Fashion Sakala. A real leader without the armband. You can only imagine how good these players would be if they could play in front of a crowd.
This is very true. Aye, very true. Chris, I mean, on Robbie McCrory, as sort of Dougie's highlighted there, he has really been sort of thrown in at the deep end, and I think maybe sometimes that's, it's maybe sometimes better that way because they've not got time to think about it. But I mean, I think on Thursday night, he never really had a huge amount to do. I mean, I think Ross said on Friday's preview show that the only sort of major contribution he made to the game was getting kicked in the head. And that's maybe been a wee bit cheeky, but it's not far off the mark. As much as we all felt it was a poor performance on Friday night, I don't think Rangers ever really looked in danger. They never really had many chances, the opposition on Thursday night. But today's, it's a different kettle of fish, really. An Old Firm game, and okay, there's no away supporters, so that maybe takes a wee edge off it, because everyone in the crowd is behind them and supporting them. But the pressure's still there, and the expectation for the support is still there. And there was two moments, and it was both with Kyogo. The first one, it was right after Hollander had scored, and we'll come on and talk about Hollander's goal. But ball got put through, and he was so quick off his line, made the block, and then the one just towards the end, Kyogo again, he's hit it to the sort of the bottom corner, and McCrory's got there. I think it was his right boot. Big moments for a young guy that's trying to establish himself at Rangers. And even I'm not going to predict one way or another whether McCrory makes it or not at Rangers. But even if he doesn't make it, he's always got this moment in his life, or in his career. He can always look back and say, I played in an Old Firm game, won an Old Firm game, and had two major moments that made sure we won an Old Firm game.
If you're going to be a Rangers goalkeeper, you need to step up in those big moments. Now, he's watched Alan McGregor for the last few years step up in those big moments, make big saves at those crucial times in games, and that's exactly what Robbie did today. I thought he was almost faultless in his performance. As you say, Thursday night, I'm sure any of us three could have played in goals. Well, me maybe not, but I'm sure you two boys could have done.
I don't know, you've never seen me in goals at the fives. If I'm in too long, I let one in so I can get it again, you know what I mean? To step into that today and handle it the way they do was really, really impressive. I can remember watching them a few years ago at youth level, and I always thought he had a mistake in him, and you always want him to do really well. Not quite sure if he was going to make the step up. I think getting the first team experience that he has done during his loans in the last couple of seasons has been really good for him. And the nub of it is, if Steven Gerrard and Colin Stewart and Rangers didn't think he was good enough to be in the Rangers squad this season, he wouldn't have been there. If they didn't think he was capable of stepping up in a situation, nobody could have foreseen this situation unfolding, but if they didn't think he was capable of playing a part and being there, he'd either been sold off in the summer or put out on loan again and say, look, go and spend another 12 months somewhere else and come back and try and improve again. He's there on merit, and he's shown today why he's certainly repaid that faith. Okay, when I got back today, I was having a wee look through some of the match reports and stuff like that, and I was really surprised to see that Rangers only had 35% of the possession today. I was genuinely quite stunned because it didn't feel like that. I think the point that Chris made earlier on, about Rangers' performance today being quite controlled, and and disciplined and all that kind of thing is on the money. But I thought 35%, especially at Ibrox. So do you think that? I mean, the more I think about it, do you think that was maybe a deliberate ploy to sort of concede possession to Celtic and sort of draw them out a wee bit so we could put the space in behind? Because I felt when we were trying to play it out, Celtic were on us, really high press, and especially in the first half, we had to go long a few times and direct. Whereas when Celtic were rolling the ball out, Rangers front three were just sitting a wee bit, allowing them to come out and conceding a wee bit of ground and a wee bit of possession. So do you think that was part of the game plan today to give Celtic a wee bit more of the ball in order to draw them out and then go for the counter?
I was equally surprised as you were, Colin, when I got home and I seen that Celtic had such a large possession stat. I was genuinely surprised. It didn't feel like a game that Celtic dominated, and I think it's probably reflective of our game plan. It seemed to be that we allowed them to have the possession in their finals, in their third, and when it came into our third, we then closed them down. We limited them to a few chances, and you can have the likes of Chris Sutton point to the chances that they had, like the Edward sitter, but we actually had the better chances, in my opinion. When you look at the first half, Frank and I were just talking before we started the show about the Morelos chance early doors. I didn't have a particularly good view of that from the Copeland, but I thought he could have done better. But you had the likes of the Ryan Kent shot off the post as well. Other than the Edward opportunity, I can't really think of too many big chances for them. But for us, I thought it was a slightly different game plan. We're normally used to pushing, pressing hard, chasing down the ball and winning possession back. And I was shouting, in the middle of the park when we were sitting off Celtic. I was very vocal in terms of shouting to press them. But as you say, it seems to be our game plan. And what do I know? Beale ball certainly beats Ange ball any day of the week.
Yeah, I think the fact that we had more shots on target shows you, and more shots on goal, than Celtic. I thought the stats made strange reading. It's like Celtic have had all this possession, but we've had, I think it was 5 or 6 more shots than them. So it does feel that Rangers, I think how Chris described it earlier on is on the money. It was very disciplined and a very tight performance, and it feels that was the game plan. You know what I mean? Pull them out, because I think we all know Celtic defensively are a bit shaky at the best of times. If you draw them out, there's space in behind and we could utilise it, and that seems to be. I'll have to watch it again. I always like to give a game a second look, but that certainly seems to be how it looks to me, because I was stunned when I saw that possession stat. I really was, because it didn't feel like they'd had that amount of possession, Celtic, I must admit. Chris, coming back to yourself, I've seen two opinions on the defensive performance today. Chris Boyd was giving it, the defence was back to its best today. Defended their box well, cleared the danger, protected McCrory, all that kind of thing. But Neil McCann on Sports Scene, which was a laugh, by the way. If you've got a chance, you should watch it. Neil McCann pointed out a couple of things that I thought he had a point. So I'm kind of somewhere in the middle. I think it was a better defensive performance today. I mean, the fact that we haven't conceded would tell you that. That's been one of the things so far this season. Rangers have been conceding, whereas last season they weren't. We haven't conceded today, but I still think that there's definitely still room for improvement defensively. I think, so a better performance, but still need to tighten up.
I think there's probably room for improvement right across the park, and if you're going to take another positive from today, I think that is one of them, that Rangers once again haven't had to be at their best to win an Old Firm game. They've not been anywhere near as resolute and solid as they were in some of the derbies last season. They've not been quite as crisp and as sharp going forward as they were at times last season, and Celtic still haven't managed to beat them. I think at times, as last season went on, especially after the January game when Celtic threw everything at Rangers and still couldn't beat them, that must have been a huge psychological impact on Celtic after that game. Though we've basically thrown everything at it, still can't beat them. I don't think Celtic threw everything, all they've got under Ange at Rangers today, I thought they played okay, and that they were also fairly confident going into it. I think it will be a wee knock for them, thinking, now we've actually given a fairly decent account of ourselves and still not managed to overcome a Rangers side that weren't anywhere near their best. I think that's another positive that Rangers can certainly take from it. They don't need to be 100% to be winning Old Firm games now. And during Gerrard's first couple of seasons, you always felt Rangers really had to be at it. Celtic had to have an off day. And if those two things lined up, Rangers had a chance. And the games that they won kind of fell into that pattern. The last half a dozen or so just isn't the case. If Rangers play well, they win the game. Even if Rangers don't play at their best now, they don't get beat.
Yeah, aye. I mean, already it feels like, early doors. I mean, after that defeat Celtic suffered at Tynecastle, and Rangers had won fairly routine against Livingston. Ange was under pressure, Celtic were in turmoil, blah, blah, blah. And then a couple of weeks later, after Rangers got that defeat at Tannadice, it sort of flipped, and it was, Rangers are in turmoil and Celtic are flying. They've got their new guy, Kyogo, he's going to score umpteen goals. He's a new Henrik Larsson. This is the second coming of the Brazil 1970 team. And now it seems to have went back again. As you say, Rangers went at their best today. I think Celtic came here today really confident, and I think a lot of Celtic fans, when they saw that Rangers team today, would have been rubbing their hands. And as you've pointed out, Chris, they couldn't do it. Rangers don't have to be at their best at the moment to win these games.
I think that is a point that Steven Gerrard, sitting in his living room when he's reflecting on the game, I think he'll take quite a lot of heart from that. He'll know, and as every Rangers fan knows, there's so much more to come from this side this season. They're not quite clicked, they're not quite at their best. But if you said to, I think, most fans at the start of the season, you win the first Old Firm game, you qualify for the group stages of the Europa League, those two things on the face of it are huge positives, and you were taking them. It's just the manner in which some of it's come around that.
Yeah.
No, that's where some of the criticism has come from, and also the Malmo game's a huge negative on all levels. But I think if you look at the first tranche of the season on what boxes did we have to tick basis, apart from the Champions League, it's been a fairly successful start for Rangers, and certainly something that they can build on, and certainly something that they're going to improve on.
Dougie, on to Big Phil Hollander and his goal, and I was really chuffed for him. I have to say, I always feel chuffed for people that score for Rangers in these games, because that's them. They're etched in history. People will always talk about this goal. The minute you score against Celtic, that's it. It'll get spoke about forever. So I was really chuffed for him, because it's only recently, I think it was the game at Tannadice, that he lost his record of, every time he plays for Rangers, Rangers don't get beat. That changed up at Tannadice, but he's still keeping his home record. So every time Phil Hollander plays at Ibrox, Rangers don't get beat. And it's just, I think it's testament to how good a player he is. I know some prefer Balogun, some prefer Hollander. I've always sort of preferred Hollander. I think he reads the game better. I think he's a more composed defender and deals with issues a bit better than Balogun. And for him to get the goal was just brilliant. It's just really good for him. It's something to look back on. And for 55,000 Rangers fans, no Celtic fans on the ground, the roar when the ball hit the net was, I think McCoy said in the commentary that the roof had come off the place. So a great moment for him, and I'm chuffed that he got that goal.
Give me a hander. I'm a big fan as well. He's my favourite centre back. As you say, I think he reads a game very well. Like yourself, I haven't watched the game back, but I was told that on Sky Sports, the panel reviewed Celtic zonal marking, and sitting in the Copeland, I've got a great view of the goal. And I was surprised that he had such a clear run at the ball, and when the cross was put in from Bonner, it was inch perfect. There was one moments before that was just marginally blocked off, that went out of play. When it came across, you could see Bonner running right onto it. In the minute, Hollander run onto it. In the minute he connected, you knew it was hitting the back of the net. Gary McAllister referenced set pieces in his post-match press conference. It's something that Celtic fans have referenced as their Achilles heel. So it's no surprise that we've scored from a corner. It's clearly something we've worked on, given that we had the similar set piece just beforehand as well. But Like yourself, delighted for Helander. He looked like he enjoyed it. But another player that looked like they enjoyed it was Borna Barisic. I don't know how visible it was on the TV, but Borna Barisic ran the full length of the Copeland, facing the fans, giving it all this. I thought that was a big moment for Borna. Could be a St Mirren moment. If he does stay, we'll come on and chat about Borna a bit later. But I think that was a big moment for Rangers. Hopefully, we can now kick on and really get going after the international break.
On Borna, Dougie, I'll stay with you now. I mean, I was going to mention him now. It's like he's one of the players that, there's a few this season that haven't quite reached the levels that they were performing at last season, and he is easily one of those. Did you see a slight improvement in his performance today? I mean, I felt a couple of times going forward, I think he's really struggling to get past his man at the moment. He just doesn't seem to have the pace to get past his man, to get a cross in. He had a chance to put a really, really good cross in the first half, and he put it into the Copeland stand. He sort of wasted that. That said, I do think there were signs here and there to suggest that he is coming back to something resembling what we know he's capable of.
Yeah, as Chris said earlier on, individually, I think there's some improvements to be had across the team. Certainly, some players like Borna haven't really reached their form that they achieved last season. Some people can speculate one of two things. One, some people are saying that his head's away. Like a few players, they're looking at the performances and automatically thinking that he wants to leave. The emotions at full time, you seen him in tears, sitting on the Ibrox turf, and then waving to fans as he was walking off. Some people then assume that he's saying his goodbyes. But the flip side of that is Borna Barisic had a tough summer. He went to the Euros expecting to play for Croatia. He picked up a knock. He didn't get the game time that he was expecting to get for Croatia, and he's came back and he's not performed at the level that he knows that he can play at. And I wonder if that emotion at full time is actually an outburst from him, in terms of he's went through that rocky patch, but we've came away today with a really big 3 points. He's played a really big part in it, and I just wonder if that, as I said, can really kickstart his season. And I know we're going to talk about the international break, but I do wonder if the international break's coming at a really good time for guys like Borna. They go away during this period, they get the chance to fully recover from whatever's happened in the summer for a lot of different players, and they come back and they really get firing.
Chris, and as I said earlier on, when Helander got that goal, I mean, the roar was it's one of the loudest I've heard in a wee while at Ibrox. And it was like my son had said not long after we came out of the ground, and we sort of walked back into the city centre and got the subway there to where my car was parked. And on the way back in, he'd sort of said that he thinks that's the best atmosphere that he's experienced. And then about half an hour, later, we're walking along, we got talking to another fan, and he said the same thing. So I do think there's a feeling that the atmosphere today is being seen as one of the best in a wee while. However, no Celtic fans there, from a Rangers supporter's perspective. No one to hate in the ground. No one to aim your sort of anger at, and your sort of. Do we need them in there? That's probably the point I'm trying to get to. Do we need the away support in there for these fixtures? Because it seems like both clubs are at a bit of an impasse on this. There seems to be a bit of pettiness involved. Well, I don't want to say pettiness, but I think the relationship between the two clubs has seriously disintegrated over the last few years. I think 2008 was a big moment, when we found out that things were happening behind the scenes to stop Rangers getting the season extended and all that kind of thing. I think that the relationships between the two clubs have disintegrated since then. When Steven Gerrard arrived, we cut the allocation from the 7,000 that they got to the 800. They done the same with us, and now there's none. So is there a chance that this is a new normal, or do you think the clubs will get together and get some form of away support in there? And do we actually need that? Because as much as I do enjoy a bit of ping pong with, they sing their songs and we sing theirs, the noise the day when that goal went in was brilliant. It was superb.
I think from a neutral perspective, if you were the SPFL and you were wanting to sell the Old Firm game to a wider audience, you would want as many opposition fans in as possible. You would want the 7,000 at Ibrox, the 7,000 at Parkhead, just to give you that game bouncing off effect. It was really noticeable today that obviously Celtic came out for a warm up and also get booed and get a bit of pelters. You didn't even have the wee half-hearted in the corner trying to fight against like a wall of noise. And I can understand why Rangers made the move they made to cut the allocation. There's also a financial reason for it as well in terms of selling higher priced season tickets. I do think the fixture has lost a wee bit of drama and a bit of sense of occasion as a result of it, but I don't see it going back. How do you say to those season ticket holders in the Broom sorry, you're not getting the Celtic games anymore? I just don't see it going back. I'd like to think it would go back to the 800, certainly for the third and fourth Old Firm games this season. I don't see it changing for the Parkhead game coming up. Celtic aren't going to have no fans at Ibrox and then allow us to take 800 to Parkhead for the second one. So I don't see that happening. The third and fourth ones, I like to think there would be in a way support there. I think it just adds a wee bit something different to the whole kind of sense of occasion, to the spectacle, and to the drama.
I do feel for. I mean, it kind of felt when I was growing up. I mean, I went to my first away game at Celtic Park, following Rangers, sort of early 90s, and it was still the terracing then. You know, it was the old Celtic Park at that point, and I think there was like 20,000 there behind that goal, if you know what I mean. And it kind of felt like a rite of passage. You know, that was part of your experience of supporting Rangers. At some point, you know, it's like you've got to tick off all the boxes in it. You know, you've got to try and go to as many grounds as possible. You go and follow Rangers at Celtic Park. You do a European away trip. All these things that you try and do as you're following Rangers. So I feel sorry. Like, again, coming back to my son, I do kind of look at him and think he is kind of missing out. You know what I mean? There's literally no chance, even if it goes back to the 800. You know, because like we don't have my chairs and all that kind of thing. So he's literally no chance of ever going to Celtic Park and following Rangers away from home in an Old Firm game. So in that sense, I do feel it's bad. But I must admit, today, just the noise and the atmosphere made it. I actually thought, well, actually, do we need them? If you know what I mean. So I'm kind of stuck in the middle.
So if there had been Celtic fans in Ibrox, I think back to the Edu game, we scored right at the end. And the atmosphere after he scored was outstanding. And then also had the Celtic fans leaving either across from you or around about you as a chance to rub it in at the same time. And that's what's missing in this one. I'm sure they've also had their fill of that over the years as well. And they've had plenty of opportunities to do it to Rangers fans. But I just think there's something missing a wee bit. And you think back to the days that you had, like, going behind enemy lines, if you like, and going to Parkhead, being in that wee corner, being a small band of Rangers fans. There's something quite significant about it, and I think it takes it away from. I think it takes a wee bit away from the game from a neutral perspective. I think it does take a bit away from it from a fan's perspective as well. But I don't think it's something that's going to change anytime soon.
That's one part I hadn't considered, actually. I forgot the joy you get from seeing the Broomloan Road empty quite quickly. The quickest I've seen it empty was when Maurice Johnson scored in the last minute. I was there that day, and I was in the Govan front in the very last row before the Broomloan stand. So it was literally like celebrating Maurice Johnson scoring against Celtic. We all turned around, and it was just a sea of empty seats. You know what I mean? The final whistle hadn't even went. It was just like they were off. They were not hanging about. So that's something I hadn't considered, I must admit. Pros and cons, I suppose. Dougie, as you mentioned earlier on there, you know, we're heading into the international break. It does feel, I think we can all agree that it's not been the start to the season that we'd hoped. It's not been as fluent. I think there's a number of reasons for that. You know, obviously this week the COVID stuff's kicked off. Prior to that, you know, there's been injuries and that kind of stuff. And the summer football as well, you know, players away to the Euros and the Copa America and stuff like that. And it has just felt a very, very disjointed sort of start to the season. And I think maybe a lot of clubs are feeling the same, that have had players away in international duty and all that kind of stuff through the summer. Is this a good point now? You know, we've reached the first international break of the season. We had that defeat at Tannadice. But overall, I think we're lying third. We're a point off the top. We've won the first Old Firm game of the season. Didn't reach the Champions League, but we're in the Europa League group stages for the fourth year in a row. More positives there than negatives, and a good opportunity now to take stock and try and get everybody in and up to pace again.
Yeah, we can all go and enjoy watching Scotland now. I think the break's coming at a good time for us. We haven't been at our best, as you say, but we're sitting in a good position in both the league, and we've qualified for the Europa League group stages. I heard Chris Burke earlier in the week describing this week for Rangers as being having a crucial game and a key game. The biggest one at this stage of the season and for financial reasons was on Thursday night. And we've progressed into the Europa League group stages for the fourth consecutive season, which for me is a tremendous achievement. I mean, you can consider that we've had, as you say, issues with player availability, the COVID situation, also playing on Thursday night in 30-degree plus heat, 4,000 miles away, having to travel home just yesterday. You can look at today's victory as very significant. It's a big one for me. We're without our manager. We had no manager, no captain, no right back, and it came out after the game that Ryan Kent was actually told not to play today because of injury and opted to play through the pain barrier, which shows how much he wanted to be a part of it. Steven Gerrard's record now in Old Firm games is 8 wins and 13, unbeaten in the last 7. And our last defeat in an Old Firm game was over 630 days ago. Chris said earlier on, these are the kind, 1-0 victories are the type of victories that you hope go on to win the league. And it feels like the pendulum has just swung a little bit in our favour in the Old Firm games in particular. When you talk about the international break, the narrative up until the international break has been that Celtic are playing this blistering football under Ange and Rangers haven't been able to recreate the form of last season. I'm hoping that the international break gives some of the players an opportunity to reflect and just calm down. Some of the players that we spoke about earlier on, like Borna, that are allegedly carrying knocks, some of the players that are out with COVID just now, hopefully it allows them time to recover fully. But as well as some of the new signings, Bakuna, Sakala and Lundstrom were obviously involved today. Hopefully the break allows these guys to settle in. And then when they come back, we've got some really tough games when we come back. We're up at McDermott Park straight away against St Johnstone, who've been in good form this season as well. Then we've got the home game against Leon, and then we've got the league flag unfurl against Motherwell. So hopefully we use this international break to fully recover and prepare ourselves for what's going to be a tough run of games. And potentially we'll start to see some of these new players come into the team.
Yeah, it does feel that it's just not been the most fluent start to the season, and it does feel like the international break, as you say, is came at the right time, and what a way to go into it. You know what I mean? Be stuffing your greatest rivals when they've came across the road, feeling quite confident, as you say, the whole Ange Ball Brazil 1970 thing. Honestly, God, don't get me started on that. But don't get me wrong. I mean, they have. I don't watch a huge amount of Celtic, but I mean, they have been obviously playing well. Winning 6-0, all that kind of stuff, a couple of times. But I think today just puts a message, and maybe actually gives some of the players in our dressing room a bit of confidence again, because maybe that just ebbed away. Right, guys. Before we move on to the next sort of topic, I'll have to highlight one of our partners, which is Football Prizes. So the prize this week is the Ali McCoy signed and custom framed Rangers shirt. It's the 92-93 away shirt, the sort of white with the red stripes on the sleeves. Number 9, McCoist on the back. Tickets cost £4.95 for this. There are 99 tickets available. How many of those 99 are left? I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure. The competition ends on Wednesday, the 1st of September, which is this Wednesday coming. So £4.95 by Wednesday night if you want to have a chance of winning that prize. Right, guys, on to the next topic. I thought we would have a wee look. It's obviously we're coming up to transfer deadline day, and comings and goings, and obviously there has been some players coming in. We'll talk about them in a couple of minutes, but it was more that the potential of players going out. Now, Chris, I'll come to you with this one. one of the rumours that was doing the rounds today when Patterson wasn't in the squad was that he was on his way. And as Dougie's obviously said there, there's some talk on social media that Borna looked, a wee bit emotional at the end of it because it's been suggested that he's on his way. I mean, in your line of work and, as a sports journalist and all that kind of thing, covering Rangers, have you heard anything in terms of how likely it is there'll be any outgoings before the window closes?
I think it's a fairly anxious last couple of hours of the transfer window, unfortunately, because it'd be sad to see the guys that gave Rangers fans so much last season and over the last couple of seasons. It'd be sad to see any of these guys go, but I think there's a financial reality and a financial acceptance that at some stage, it's not to say that the squad has to be broken up, but the books have to be balanced in some manner and means. Certainly after missing out on the Champions League. So I would hate, as much as I'd hate to see any of these guys move on, I wouldn't be completely surprised, unfortunately. I did see the social media stuff around about Borna. I don't have any knowledge of anything in the pipeline for him, but he is one of the ones that you would think it might be a time for him to move. Glenn Kamara's obviously the other one, plenty of interest in him from down south. The problem that Rangers have now, having missed out on the Champions League, it's not a case of teams know we're desperate for the money, but the asking price naturally goes down. Rangers can't command the type of fees, and even I think if you look at the market as a whole, Rangers are kind of operating in that 10 to 20 million pound bracket. There's not many 10 to 20 million pound deals being done. Teams are trying to pick up players on the cheap, or if you're one of the mega clubs, you're going and spending 50 million on a centre-half at Brighton, or you're going and signing Ronaldo or Messi. That bracket that Rangers operate in, there's not a lot of deals being done, certainly in the UK at that level. So it does make it tricky for Rangers. But I wouldn't be completely surprised if somebody moves on. It then becomes interesting: do they think they've got enough strength and depth in the squad, or do you then go and replace what you've potentially sold? I think in some areas, like Kamara, for example, I don't think they would need to go and strengthen. If Borna was to leave, you need to go and get another left back, because as good as Calvin Bassey has been in the last few weeks, you can't go with one left back. You need to go and bring someone in. Whether that's then going to be a first choice for Bassey to then challenge, or whether he's bumped up one and it's somebody to come in and provide a bit of competition for him, time will tell. But I think there's certain areas of the squad, if somebody was to leave, business would have to be done, or vice versa, depending who it was. You wouldn't necessarily have to go back in and try and do something late on.
Yeah, and it kind of struck me as well that it was actually after Thursday's game. I thought, well, it was actually really crucial that we qualified on Thursday, purely for the financial reasons. You know what I mean? If we ended up dropping further down into the sort of Europa Conference League, then that could have had an even bigger impact in who we had to move on. But in terms of Dougie, in terms of those coming in, do you think there'll be, any sort of last minute moves, people coming in? And one thing I feel about the players that have come in the summer, I don't really think any of them have had a major impact yet. We're still really depending on the guys that were already there. And I think you could say that at the moment, Celtic are seeing more back from the players that were brought in for the summer. Okay, they've still lost 2 games, and we're still ahead of them in the league and all the rest of it. But you can argue that the players that they've brought in the summer have improved them, whereas we're still waiting for our guys to really have that impact so far.
Yeah, I think there's a significant difference between the Rangers additions and the Celtic additions. Starting with Celtic new signings, they were all signed for the starting 11. They've obviously needed to strengthen their starting 11 with so many players returning to their parent clubs after their loan spells, and selling the guys like Ayer. So they've had to bring in players for their starting 11, whereas we've just needed to tweak a championship winning side. But when you look at the players that we've signed, none of them came into my thoughts today for the starting 11. Obviously, none of them did start. 2 of them featured from the bench, but none of them, in my opinion, strengthened the starting 11 at this point. That's not to say that throughout the season they might start to come into their own, hit form and push for a place in the team. But when I was thinking ahead to this window, what I was really wanting was to strengthen the starting 11. I think we can all say that we have improved the squad. But I wanted at least one addition. And, when you look at the next couple of days before the window slams shut, I don't think we're going to sign anybody else to enhance the squad, because I think the squad's already big enough now. And I don't think we've got the money to go and sign somebody that walks into our starting 11 when you consider how strong the starting 11 is right now. So this is probably how the squad's going to look unless somebody does leave. As you say, there was rumours yesterday about Nathan Patterson, and then rumours started to emerge that Rangers have been scouting a right back from Middlesbrough called Jed Spence. So I think any incomings for us will depend on who leaves. And as Chris says, it's probably an anxious couple of days for us, because I don't want to lose any of these players in this window. But at the same time, we want to get our value for money for anyone who does leave. Goldson's out of contract in the summer. There's hope that he may sign a new deal. Hopefully he does. You've got a whole bunch of players, including Kamara, who are out of contract in the summer of 2023. So you don't want to have guys like Kamara running down their contract the last year, because you spoke about not progressing in the Champions League devalues them. Get into your last 12 months devalues them as well. I don't think we'd be able to command as big a fee for someone like Kamara if you only had 12 months. So if we do get a sizable offer for someone like Kamara in the next couple of days, I think we'll have to take it, because I think the bid will be significantly less next summer. But when you're talking about some of our new players, just looking ahead to the next couple of games, I mentioned already, we've got 3 big games after the international break: St Johnstone, Lyon, and Motherwell. I don't think any of our 3 players start any of our new players start those 3 games. McCrory, we've spoken about today, has really impressed, and he's taken his chance today to show the management team and the support what he's capable of. For me, it's up to our new signings when they come off the bench, which I think is most likely in the next 3 games, certainly, to go in and show what they're capable of and chat the team forward. Let's not get the type of guy David Turnbull and the year last year. John Lewis is just more one game Turnbull his entire career.
You were kind of cutting out a wee bit there towards the end, Dougie. Chris, what about you? I mean, in terms of the signings that have come in the summer, I mean, as myself and Dougie were talking about there, they've not really hit the mark yet. Would you hope that would change as time progresses and we'd start to see a wee bit more out of them?
I think we have to see. Well, it's hard to write off Bacuna just yet. Because he's not kicked a ball, but he seems very much the type of signing you make after you miss out on the Champions League and you still need a midfielder. If Rangers had beaten Malmo and got to and then went all the way to the group stages, I don't think we go and take a Huddersfield midfielder. You're even higher than that. Lundstrom, I've been disappointed with so far. I thought he'd be better. Sakala is clearly raw and potentially one that you're looking at to how they'll impact next season rather than this season. You're perhaps seeing this as a kind of bedding in campaign for them. So, like you both said, I don't think the starting 11 has improved, which is perhaps understandable given the financial realities of just where the club is and COVID and all the things we've discussed. But the time to strengthen, the time to kick on is when you're on top. And if the rest of the season doesn't pan out how we think it will and how we hope it will, there will be a bit of criticism directed towards the manager and Ross Wilson and the board for saying, much like Celtic fans have said to the board over the last 18 months or so, you didn't make the most of a chance when you were on top. You didn't improve. You didn't get better when you had that advantage. So I think it's a big season, obviously for Rangers, but a big season for the recruitment team. They need Sakala, Lundstrom, Bacuna to really prove that these guys are worth having on board and that they didn't just sign them for the sake of them. That they didn't sign them because just to fill squad jerseys. They actually signed them because they thought they could make Rangers better and take Rangers to a different level. And so far, I think the jury's out certainly on Lundstrom and Sakala. They're going to have the impact required to really make Rangers better or significantly better this season.
Right, guys. Right, before we finish up, we've actually went through the agenda. We've been too efficient tonight. But I did think, Chris, since you're on and you know you're with the Glasgow Times and all the rest of it, I thought it'd be worthwhile. We've already spoke about this on the show a couple of times, but we've never had anyone from the press on to sort of discuss it. You know, this situation between Rangers and the sort of mainstream media, as they're always called. You know, and this situation that Rangers are charging mainstream media outlets for access and stuff like that. Now, I'm kind of in the middle. Large chunks of this makes me feel a wee bit uncomfortable, and it makes me wonder how much scrutiny the club will get. Don't get me wrong, chuffed to see fan media in there. I think that's a growing thing, and it's good to see these guys getting in there. But there are elements of it that make me feel uncomfortable. But also, when I think of some of the stuff that some journalists have done with Rangers, you know, what they've said, you know, and we all know who we're talking about here, I can kind of understand the club saying, well, you know what, we don't need you at the club at all. We're not going to give you access. Or if we are going to give you access, if they're going to write, you know, nonsense about us, then we're going to charge you for the fact. So it'd be really interesting to get, you know, your side of it, because you're on the other side of it as a journalist who's now suddenly been hit with this sort of, or your paper's been hit with this sort of, you have to pay this or else you don't get access. And understand the Glasgow Times hasn't paid it, so you don't have the access. You can still get games, but you don't have access to the actual press conferences and stuff. So it'd be good to get your take on it, you know, to see that side of it.
As I say, Colin, we do still have access to the games. I've been at every Ibrox game this season apart from the Livy game, and it was up at Ross County last week as well. So you can get access to the games. We just don't have access to the press conferences. So pre-match pressers and post-match pressers, there's no access to. So we don't get to put our questions to Gerrard or Gary Mack or player, whatever it is. It's a direction of travel the club have been going in for a wee while. I think it's not a surprise that it's got to this stage. You wouldn't be surprised to hear that I'm dead against it. I don't like it. I don't approve of it. I don't see the value in it. But if that's how the club want to conduct themselves, if that's how they wish to proceed in terms of media relations, there's very little that certainly that on a personal level, very little that I can do about it. There's also been discussions between papers of or all media organisations over the summer, both amongst ourselves and with the club. The situation hasn't really changed. I don't see it changing anytime soon. So I think the status quo will remain for the foreseeable. When it comes to the rise of fan media, I think in some regards it's been pitched as mainstream media or traditional media against fan media. I don't quite get why it has to be an us versus them. I'm obviously happy to come on do this yourselves every few weeks. I've done a lot of work with Stevie at Four Lads, going well with the guys at Heart and Hand. There's no reason why traditional media and fan media can't coexist in the same bubble. Can't do Rangers, but do it differently. That's not how some people see it, and obviously understand that and respect that. That's perhaps not how the club see it. And again, it's end of the day, it's their ball. But I don't think it's a good look for a club of Rangers' size and stature to be operating this way. And I think there's a bit of short-termism and shooting themselves in the foot almost. If you want to, I made this point to a lot of people over the last few weeks, if you want to basically run Scottish football, you need to have some degree of influence in the media. You need to have some degree of influence in the SFA and the SPFL, and you need to have some degree of influence in the Scottish Government. Can Rangers say that they have that influence in any of those three areas right now? I'm not convinced. I don't see how. I think Rangers are in danger of missing out on a great opportunity. They're league champions for the first time in 10 years. Huge uncertainty and changes over the road at Parkhead. And I don't think Rangers are positioning themselves sufficiently to actually take advantage of that, just because where they are in those three areas. And all three areas are all intertwined. They all work into a certain area. The biggest complaint that Rangers fans have had with the press over several years now is Celtic run the media, Peter Lawwell runs the media. Well, that's because Peter Lawwell was very good at his job and Peter Lawwell had a certain level of influence. Rangers are in danger of missing out on the opportunity to have that influence in terms of media government and how Scottish football is run. Now that's on them. It's up to them. From personal point of view, I'll just continue to do the job the best as I can, and fortunate to have the position, have the opportunity to go and watch Rangers and cover Rangers. So I think everybody's got different opinions on it. I respect all opinions on it. Personally and professionally, I don't like it, but I do understand why there's clearly certain issues there. And I think it's a very interesting debate, and a really in-depth debate that probably we could fill an entire podcast with one night, I would think. So maybe.
Well, it's international break next week. You never know.
Plenty of talking points and plenty of time to talk about it. But I do see all sides of it. But I say you won't be surprised to hear that I'm not for it. But I say it is what it is. I don't think it's going to change anytime soon.
Dougie, quickly, just give us your sort of thoughts on that, especially sort of some of the stuff that Chris said there. You know, that if Rangers want to have more influence, you know, and the sort of corridors of power and all this kind of stuff, that they have to have a certain amount of power within the media and, you know, Scottish government and all that kind of thing. So does this stance have the potential to sort of, you know, damage us in the sort of long term?
It could. In my opinion, what I've seen in social media is a lot of fans don't really understand why Rangers need the MSM to influence positively. They see the rise of fan media, the club having its own media team as the opportunity to use that to positively promote our achievements. Certainly last year with 55, but I suppose my criticism is I think we're still waiting on Inside 55, for example. I personally, as a supporter, wanted to see something in video format of our season that won the league, and we've not had that, so that disappoints me. And I think we potentially could have had something better if we had a better relationship with the media. But I think one big factor around the media that a lot of supporters don't necessarily recognise is you get positive stories, but you also get negative stories. And I think one of my concerns is when Chris is talking about the influence in the media, is there are times where a negative story could emerge around a particular player or a particular scenario that the club could potentially use that influence to not divulge the information at key times, i.e. right before an Old Firm game, for example. I just wonder if, without having that influence, if that opens up an opportunity for us to have zero influence on negative stories, and we could see a rise in stories that potentially previously wouldn't have hit the papers.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I'm really in the middle of this. I'm stuck in the middle. I'm a bit like you, Chris, and you, Dougie. It doesn't make me feel entirely comfortable, but I can kind of understand where the club are coming from, because there are certain journalists, we know who they are, where it's constant, and I've been hearing stories for a while now that the club have been trying, especially with the BBC. You know, there's been a lot of efforts with the BBC, and nothing happens. You know, there's no changes whatsoever. No matter how hard Rangers try, the BBC aren't interested. So it's a tricky one, but a good debate, and hopefully it won't be as damaging as used to are predicting, especially after that today, because let's end on a positive. It was a good day. We're all going to have this is a time when you hate being in lockdown and still working from home and stuff, because you can't walk into the office on Monday morning bounding in with a big grin in your face going, get it up, yes. You know what I mean? The Celtic supporters that are in your office. But I'll just message them. I'll get the message to them eventually. Right, guys, looking at the agenda there and the time, I think it's probably best to wrap it up there. So a big thanks to Chris and Dougie for their contributions. Excellent stuff, as always, from they two. International week next week. I would assume we'll have a show out at some point. Obviously, no preview show because there's no game. But Frankie's not got the new schedule out yet, so I don't know if we're on for next week or not. But keep your eye out. We'll keep you informed on social media and stuff if we've got a show on. In the meantime, guys, get yourself onto the Gersnet website and forum at www.gersnet.co.uk. My throat and my voice just about managed to hold up for the full show. Enjoy your week, guys. You know, it's been a rocky few weeks, but we got a good result today. So, as I said, we can go into our workplaces tomorrow with a big smile on our face. And until the next time, bye for now.